Just like this, Orkney found himself in a tight spot. It took nearly 20 hours, but Orkney knew that staying put was a dead end. Despite the odds, he held on to his will to survive, mustered up courage, took a deep breath, and plunged into the water. Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Dark Psychology World channel. Not sure if you've come across the term survivor guilt. In simple terms, it's a mental state where a person who has survived a disaster feels an overwhelming sense of guilt. To make it easier to understand, let me share an incredible story about a man who survived being trapped at sea for 3 days. How did he manage to stay alive? What kind of psychological changes did he go through afterward? And if you ever find yourself stranded at sea, how can you survive? If you're curious to learn more, stick around. Situated on the southeastern side of the Atlantic Ocean, there's a bay on the western coast of Africa known as the Gulf of Guinea. This place is rich in oil layers, and you can often see offshore oil strikes extracting oil. On a stormy day, May 26, 2013, about 20 miles off the coast of Nigeria, a large cruise ship was operating. 3 tugboats were ahead, helping the cruise ship dock. The main job of these tugboats is to assist the big ships, ensuring they don't hit the port too fast when departing and entering, and to help anchor the ship at the designated location in bad weather. On this day of high winds and waves, around 5 a.m., a tugboat named Just 4 was knocked directly into the sea by massive waves. There were 12 crew members on board, one of whom was Harrison Ojigba, a 29-year-old from Orkney who worked as a cook on this tugboat. He's the protagonist of our story today, the man who survived 3 days trapped under the sea. Around 4 a.m., he woke up to use the restroom due to an urgent need to urinate. Little did he know his world was about to be turned upside down. The ship sank rapidly and seawater flooded in at an alarming rate. There were pirates nearby at the time, so everyone had locked their doors tightly while sleeping, which became a significant obstacle to escape. Caught in the restroom, Orkney quickly pulled up his pants, opened the door, and tried to make a run for it. But the water was rushing in so fast that the water pressure made it impossible for Orkney to move forward. 3 of his colleagues in front of him were trying to swim to the escape door, but a strong current swept them all into the sea, making their chances of survival seem very low. At this point, Orkney was also washed away by the current. He knew he was not far from death. However, he found that he could still breathe. As it turned out, he was flushed into another restroom. Everything was upside down at this time. In other words, the entire ship had flipped upside down. The surroundings were almost pitch black, and the ship had sunk 30 meters under the sea. He managed to grab onto an inverted wash basin pole. Even though the toilet space was tiny, he could at least keep his head above the small amount of air left in the toilet. Search and rescue personnel at sea quickly launched operations. They found where the ship had sunk and dropped the anchor for positioning. Divers also went on cruises in the sea. Unfortunately, they found no survivors and the rescue operations were suspended. But actually, when Orkney heard something moving outside, he once tried to knock on the wall. However, due to water and sound insulation, no one heard him. Orkney spent almost 20 hours in this small space. He knew that staying here was a dead end. The oxygen was almost depleted, and after being soaked in water for so long, he could hardly maintain his body temperature. But he still had the will to survive. He took a deep breath and dove into the water where he couldn't even see his fingers. His move showed that he was giving it his all. He swam, and sure enough, he made it to another room. Luckily, there was still 1.2 meters of air left here, even more than before. Although the problem of insufficient oxygen was temporarily solved, there was another critical issue: his dropping body temperature. He found some gadgets in the dark, removed some boards, and used a floating mattress to barely cobble together a floating platform. This kept at least his upper body out of the water, reducing heat loss. Even so, he was still very cold and very hungry. In this small, dark space, he was extremely scared and frightened. During this process, the only thing he could do was think about his family and keep praying to God. He also smelled a terrible odor and heard various irregular crashing sounds, as well as sounds similar to sea creatures eating carcasses. More than 50 hours passed like this. Everyone at sea thought that no one had survived. So, a deep-sea salvage and diving team was invited to at least recover the bodies of the missing crew members. The salvage work wasn't easy either. Due to the sludge kicked up by ships in the sea, the salvage team had limited vision and movement. Just as they were bringing the camera lens, commanded by colleagues at sea, Orkney came into sight. Suddenly, he heard the movement of divers outside. He immediately hit the wall again, afraid of missing out again. He mustered up the courage to dive again. Orkney touched the diver with his hand, but the diver immediately took a step back. Orkney was worried that the divers couldn't see clearly and might have mistaken him for a sea creature and attacked him. So he also took a step back and just kept waving in front. Soon, colleagues at sea passed the camera lens and discovered Orkney. Under their command, they arrived at Orkney's survival room. The diver was first very surprised. You can actually survive on this 30-meter seabed. Orkney had some carbon dioxide poisoning, though, and looked a bit trance-like, but his various body functions were pretty good. Divers immediately put oxygen masks on Orkney, but they couldn't bring him back to the sea right away. Because people are under water pressure for a long time, dissolved gases in human blood will increase. If you return to the sea immediately, gases in the blood form bubbles. This can lead to various joint pains and problems with the nervous system. It can even result in paralysis, cardiac arrest, and death. So, divers stayed with Orkney underwater, breathing steadily for 20 minutes. Then they slowly swam together into the diving bell and brought him back to the surface. After that, he was immediately sent to a decompression chamber where he stayed for 3 days. On May 28th at 7 p.m., Orkney was rescued on board the ship. More than 60 hours had passed. In other words, he was trapped at the bottom of the sea for nearly 3 days. But Orkney thought he had only stayed in the sea for 1 night, under the impression that it was only 12 hours. The media also reported on the man who miraculously survived at the bottom of the sea for 3 days. Although Orkney survived, he suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. He often had nightmares about the deep sea, being submerged in seawater, surrounded by darkness, and hearing the sounds of scary sea creatures. At the same time, he also developed survivor's guilt. He would often wonder why he was the one who survived and not others, showing signs of self-blame. Survivor's guilt and PTSD have something in common. They are both reactions after experiencing major events. But it should be noted that survivor's guilt and PTSD are different. PTSD is defined as a mental illness, while survivor's guilt is just a state of mind, or you could say, a moral trauma. There are generally 5 types of survivor's guilt. 1. Feeling guilty for what you've done, like deceiving others or achieving goals through unfair means. 2. Feeling guilty for what you once thought, like if you ever considered leaving your companions behind when you were in trouble to save yourself. 3. Believing that your own negligence led to the disaster and feeling guilty, like thinking a fire happened because you didn't check the appliances properly. 4. Feeling guilty that you haven't done enough, like when someone is in trouble in front of you but you can't help them. 5. Feeling guilty that you got opportunities that others didn't get. When many people died and you survived, you feel like others are being victimized and you became the beneficiary. This situation can make people feel self-blame and guilt, thinking it would be better if you encountered misfortune like everyone else. And Orkney is probably the 5th type. Survivor's guilt can lead to self-blame, but I believe it's part of human nature. Humans are inherently good and empathetic towards others, which makes our society better. If everyone lacked empathy and everyone was a sociopath, that would be truly terrifying. If you're unfortunate enough to face such a situation, like Orkney who miraculously survived, what should you do? What did he do right? We know that when people are swept under the sea, survival is usually difficult. But if you happen to be stuck in a cave or room in a boat, there's actually a glimmer of hope. Here are 5 major steps to remember. 1. Go upstream immediately. You might find big air bubbles in ships. It's like when you press an empty cup into the water, you'll find that there's still air at the bottom of the cup. As long as you can control the cup and not let the air escape, this air can keep you alive for a while. 2. Look for objects that can float. Although you currently have enough air to survive, your body is still soaked in water, which will cause heat to dissipate faster than your body can produce it. The normal human body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, and below 35 degrees Celsius, symptoms of hypothermia may occur. So, you must quickly find objects that can get your body out of the water to reduce the rate of temperature loss. Just like Orkney, immediately remove the surrounding boards to get your body out of the water. 3. Continuously slap the water surface. This will make the carbon dioxide you exhale dissolve in water. In fact, after Orkney was rescued on the boat, it was found that his carbon dioxide poisoning level was exactly 58%. When the human carbon dioxide poisoning level is higher than 58%, it could cause a coma or even death. Slapping the water saved his life. 4. Stay calm. Tension and struggle will make you use up a lot of oxygen faster and produce more carbon dioxide. The best thing to do is to slow down your breathing and heartbeat, just like Orkney did. Remember, these steps could be the difference between life and death in such a situation. It's easy to imagine how a quiet prayer for your loved ones can be a real source of comfort. The final step is waiting for rescue. After completing the previous 4 steps, you've essentially maximized your survival time. When you're unfortunately trapped at the bottom of the sea, the chances of swimming back to shore are almost zero. The only way you can be saved is by staying alive as long as possible and waiting for rescue. As we can see, Orkney did all of the above, which allowed him to survive. But there was one key point that made his rescue possible: the timing. The average diver can't stay more than 20 minutes at a depth of 30 meters due to the relationship with air pressure. According to scientists, the 6 cubic meters of space where Orkney was located could keep him alive for 2.5 days. And he was discovered just in time 2.5 days later. It's as if he was favored by Lady Luck. Maybe his prayers were really heard. So, these are some methods of self-rescue under the sea. In fact, no matter where you go to sea or anywhere else, it's best to inform family or friends. That way, if you're in trouble, there's someone who can call for help. Wait, don't rush off just yet. There are 2 more videos next to this one that you might also like. Feel free to click in and take a look. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. You can also share these interesting pieces of knowledge with your family and friends. Hit the subscribe bell and I'll notify you when there are new videos. This is the Dark Psychology World channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.